Welcome to the Brett Davis Podcast.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to my show today. Of course, we're from Attorney King Studios in Coronado, California. And I'd like to say hello to everybody. And of course, I'm very honored at the guest that we are having for a second interview where we can see him in person, of course, because last time we didn't get a chance to do that, but we were able to get the interview in. Dr. Robert Goldman. But before we start that interview, I want to thank my sponsors, of course, because without them, we wouldn't have our lights and our machinery and all the things that we do and support. Doctor, of course, not doctor, he actually probably is a doctor, Attorney King Amanpour, Sequan Casino and Resort Chairman Cody. Thank you for everything you do. We look forward to doing that Academy Award for School Teachers coming up with you in September. IB Fitness CEO Marina Teal, thank you for what you do. And we love your podcast. It's a little bit Howard Stern and worse and better and all those things like that make it what it is. And of course, the infamous Nikki Rottens, who does a really good ribeye. Dr. Goldman would be very happy if he eats ribeyes. I think he'd like that ribeye. And of course, chicken sandwiches, and their food is off the charts. And we got a beautiful view of downtown San Diego. So thank you, Tim, Aaron, for all you do. And of course, we love your podcast as well. Now, finally, after all that spiel, now we can cut to the chase and say hello to Dr. Robert Goldman. How you doing?
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. It's always an honor to see you. I always treasure our moments where we're able to chat, because I'll tell you, in the crazy times that we live in, isn't it interesting how, because you've gone through a lot in your life. I mean, you've gone from, a situation where you weren't the richest person in the world, and you have all the accessories at your disposal to be able to build the career that you were able to, but you found a way. And I think we need more of those types of stories right now, because I think the world and the country really is kind of lost a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have lost their way. They're sort of living in kind of a virtual selfie universe. And this is unfortunate because they're not interacting with people. They're sort of interacting electronically, and they're really missing out on the humanness of being human. And that's why I'm looking forward. I'm leaving tomorrow for the Arnold Sports Festival. And we haven't had a real Arnold Sports Festival in, several years here. So it's going to be great to see everybody. I'll be doing the induction for the International Sports Hall of Fame. And I also sponsor USA Wrestling and a lot of the events. So it's going to be great to see everybody. And I can tell you, just even from the big martial arts event we had in January, we had not been together for almost 3 years. And it was just, you can't replace it. You can't do this virtually. It's not the same as being with people, those private conversations you have. They get to hang out and get to socialize like people, not like some cyborg, video game. It's unfortunate because a lot of people are, they don't even talk to each other. They're just staring at their phone when they're at dinner, and families as well. This is crazy.
So I have two daughters, of course, both the ones that's in her senior year of high school and the other one's in middle school, and they're doing phenomenal, by the way, in school. And I learned through them. First thing I learned was my kids came to me one day, my oldest, and she says, because we have her friends were coming in and out of the house, and they kind of take over. They think it's like Animal House. They think it's like toga time, and they come in, they help themselves to food, and then make themselves at home. And then the kids were always very nice, the group. And then my oldest daughter said, Dad, out of all my friends that come to the house, you and Mom are the only ones that are married. Everybody's divorced. I says, well, you're kidding me. Not that everybody
family units really gotten destroyed. It's terrible. If you don't have a father or a mother, it's not really balanced. We were poor growing up, but we had a great family. No divorce, and very close. My brothers, I talk to my folks every day on Zoom. I try never to miss a day, because you don't know, one day you're not going to get that opportunity. And, very close with my two brothers and their families as well. And that family unit is critically important.
So I agree. So that I kind of knew the stats anyway, but when you see the actual kids coming in and the interaction, and then, I just didn't realize how unique our situation was. And then nowadays, of course, and then I found out also that a date nowadays is actually getting on the screen and talking.
Yeah, it's really pretty warped. It's, you had your online dating situations and everything, and now it's so virtual. people, and they're not even putting up pictures of themselves anyway. They're putting up, who knows what. They'll just plagiarize a photo from a movie star or a model, or
terrible.
a guy will write to a girl, and the guy's short, fat, bald, and about 80 years old, and he's showing a picture of some 20-year-old model, and it just doesn't work out. It's a false way to live, and it's unfortunate. It really has warped a lot of the human interaction that is so critically important.
Well, and again, I think here's the thing. Not everybody is meant to be married, but it does. It's not and like you said, nowadays it's something that is lost, and I think everybody has to find what works for them. But when you have kids, it does change the scenario. And the next generation, I know people probably said the same thing about our generation. Man, I don't know what's going to happen, but maybe they'll find their way along the way. I mean, I hope they do. They're going to have to, right?
Well, there was a saying that was written up that said, with how horrible it is for the youth of our country and what is happening in the world today, we don't think we're going to survive another generation. That was about 2,000 years ago. However, today, with the way things are going, with the technology, the kind of bad people in control of what's going on, the lack of rights and privacy and so on, we could be in for a real challenge, especially for the young people coming up, because they don't understand what freedom is. They don't understand the way we grew up, and the thing, we didn't have like zero tolerance. If we met each other in school, we may have had a fight in school, but it wasn't zero tolerance. We ended up being friends with those people that we had a little fisticuff with. We didn't shoot at each other. It was just part of growing up. And now everything is bad or banned or censored or canceled, or, you can't breathe. And kids cannot get the ability to adjust as human beings with each other and interact as people versus, this kind of bullying virtually on, behind a screen. And this is a really dangerous situation because there's no consequences. Somebody could do some really bad things to others with no consequence. I kind of liked it in the old days, my first day, I grew up in the projects in the ghetto. I grew up in a really rough neighborhood, we're not from a well-to-do family, but we had a great family. And my first day of junior high school, I was 12 going on 13 years old. I was maybe 120 pounds soaking wet. And our junior high school was surrounded by the projects. In other words, those were the tenement housing. And they used to burn the garbage every day. So the burnt garbage would rain down on your head. We didn't have grass in our schoolyard. We only had broken cement and broken glass. And that's what we used to play in between until we went into the school itself. And in my first day of junior high school, they're playing a game and they didn't want to let me play. So I got in a fight with the first guy and I beat him up. So I got to play. And then a bigger guy came over and beat the daylights out of me. And then another bigger guy than him came over and beat him up. And I ended up playing football with those guys for 8 years, all the way up through junior high school and high school. It was a rough day at the beginning, but after that, they had respect because even though I was 120 pounds, and one was 190 pounds and a half foot taller than me, and the other one was 100 pounds heavier than him. And we ended up becoming friends after that all the way through high school. Unfortunately, they have both passed away from now, one from drugs and one got into a bad incident with the police for a robbery. But I grew up in the projects, but we didn't know we were poor because everyone was poor. So you didn't really know the difference. And part of the human interaction was the physicality of it all, not online, not on your cell phone, not with taking pictures. It was human interaction, good or bad. It was still a human interaction. At the end of the day, I feel very fortunate to have grown up in that environment because you appreciate stuff.
I think so too. This generation is very safe and very protected, more than what we were. I agree with everything you said, by the way. I grew up by the railroad tracks, of course, the right side of the tracks. but we had the school across the street. We had Navy housing on the south side. On the east side, we had mobile homes. And then on the right side of the school, everything surrounded the school. So south, everything around the school was south. There was east. That was the mobile homes. North was the low income housing. But everybody gathered in that school, and then everything worked out, and we played sports there. We grew up there in that area of the South Bay in San Diego, but it worked. And a lot of those people, it's crazy. I still stay in touch with a lot of them.
Well, I still have my childhood friends from when I was like 7 or 8 years old. It's kind of interesting. I'm like 6 or 7 years old, and I'm walking almost a mile to elementary school by myself through the weeds where there are the water rats, and we usually find a body that the mafia guys dumped off in the weeds over there on the way to school. So I get to school, you tell a teacher, oh, they dumped another body. And I'm like 6 or 7 years old, walking almost a mile to school. We didn't think anything of it either way. It was just, this was what we did, you know, and I'm still friends with my friends that are still alive, of course. And we know each other since we're 7 or 8 years old. And, but we didn't look at it as good or bad. It was just, this was our world back then.
So when did you get involved with martial arts? How old were you?
After getting jumped by like groups of like 5 or 10 guys at a time, you sort of, and you get to see some of the movies, you know, with Bruce Lee or some of the old karate movies. I started when I was a teenager. So I've had many, many years of training. I used to sneak out of the house at night to take the train into the city in New York to Chinatown. And I was the only Caucasian in the group. It was all Black, Puerto Rican, and Chinese. And they go, "What are you doing here?" And it was death-defying just even to get into the city. I'd keep nunchucks in my jacket and Shuriken Star in the back of my belt when I'd go into the city. You know, so it was a very exciting trip just to go in and then get back in one piece. But you know, when you get really well trained, you're the last person to get in a fight. You don't pick up, even if somebody hits you, you walk away. If you can get away, you get away. There's never, if you can avoid ever the confrontation, they can call you whatever they want. They can call you names or anything. If your life is not truly at risk, you get away and you don't worry about the egoic part of it.
So you go through these challenges. How old did you say you were about?
I was probably about 13 or 14 when I started, but I had already hit world level as an athlete for a Guinness World Book when I was 14. So I was not a normal 14-year-old. I already had a world record in sit-ups, had, you know, push-up records. I was a kid, you know. I didn't know I broke the world record. I was watching David Frost, who they used to have on the Guinness Book of World Record, and they had a guy who did 10,000 sit-ups. I go, wait a second, I just did more than that, and and I did them straight leg, and they did it bent leg. So I said, well, and then I went through the process with Guinness World Book multiple times, which they're quite strict. If you don't do it and it's not verified, you don't get in. And even if you get in, it's hard to stay in because somebody may break your world record before they go to press. And that had happened to me. So I had to go back. I would usually try and set world records right before New Year's because then the other guys wouldn't have a chance to submit.
Oh, that's smart. You're very strategic, Dr. Bob. Good for you.
No, everything in life is strategic and planning.
Do you play chess at all?
I was actually a tournament chess player when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And then I studied, I was a prodigy art student too. I studied at Brooklyn Museum, Pratt Institute, and so on. When I was, they had to put phone books on the chairs for me to sit up because I was at a college when I was just, I was only like, in first grade.
Every time I talk to you, I think I know a lot about you, and I know a lot, but you seem to always had more things that I would have never even imagined. That's amazing.
Well, I forgot to even, you jogged my memory. That's why I just remembered it about chess.
Those are great. Chess. So why is it here? I'm going back to this generation because we're in the current times, and I get everything you're talking about. Why is it that some kids think that it's wrong to be successful and make money? Where did that come from, you think?
Well, I think wanting to make money has been a drive for many kids. I think if that's your drive, you kind of miss the plot. It's got to be, what are you doing? How are you going to change this world for the better and those around you, and how are you going to mentor others to grow as you grow? But that's a little hard when you're young. You're just trying to survive, especially even when I was in med school. I was, I had like a $10 a week food budget. I was working 3 jobs, during med school. You do what you can to survive, but I think it's always important to keep in that mindset of that giving back portion. And fortunately, now I'm in a position where I can get to do a fair amount of that. And I would say probably 80% of my life activities are volunteer, like the Arnold this weekend, the International Sports Hall of Fame. I pay for everything. with we don't allow any commercial aspect. It's got to be about the athletes and only about those athletes. Just like donating the big 800-pound statue to the city of Columbus, the statue of Arnold, which everybody enjoys now. Everybody wants to get their picture taken in front of
It's
it.
beautiful. So you donate.
And then I had sponsored over the years the Highland Games, the strongman competition, USA Arm Wrestling, the Arnold Sports Film Festival. Like some really cool stuff that had changed a lot of lives.
I did not know about you donating. I remember you taking photos with the statue with Arnold, and I didn't realize you donated that. I love that.
Yeah, I donated that to the city of Columbus, and I'll see it this weekend. It's sitting right out there in front of the Columbus Exposition Center, and people are lined up. I mean, long lines of people.
Yes.
And I usually like to just get a quick photo every year when I go. And there were a few years back where I wanted to get a photo, and there's a line of like 200 people. So one of my handlers was there, and he screamed out. He said, "Hey, that's the guy that donated the statue." And all the people went, "Wow!" And then they wanted to take a picture with me with the statue, which was kind of fun. So it was nice that the kids were excited to get a photo with the statue.
So that's a great idea. I mean, you are so your mind, the way you think. How did you come up with that idea for a statue?
No, that wasn't my idea. Just the opportunity came up, and it took me about a half a second to say, yes, I will do this. And that's how it happened.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's certain things on that Arnold Sports Festival that you've definitely left your thumbprint on. One, of course, is the event coming up on Saturday, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very special year for me because it's sort of, it's our 11th year, but it's really, to me, it's our 10th anniversary. So it's the first time that it's going to be all combative sports, all UFC world champions, MMA world champions, boxing world champions, martial arts, karate world champions, and 7 versus our usual 5 inductees. And many of them I know quite well, Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef and Frank Shamrock. And, there's really some great guys that are, that I know for many years through the martial arts community. So for me, it's really going to be a lot of fun because martial arts is always, the reason I really like martial arts is everyone's a teacher and they're interested in mentoring that next generation. In other sports, they kind of covet and they hold their secrets or they hold their techniques private, where in martial arts, teaching is a very strong component and sharing your art. And that's why I really like martial arts and the camaraderie. It's true that sometimes in MMA, UFC, you have some people that get a little out of control, but for the most part, the martial arts champions are some of the most gentle, kind, and respectful, non-violent kind of people. I mean, when I was training for the Olympics in freestyle wrestling, on the mat, I try and kill the guy. But after the mat, shaking hands, give him a hug, good job, look forward to training with you again. But I was a very, very brutal competitor when I was training. I'd want to beat the guy so bad that if he ever saw me, he would not want to come on the mat again. And that actually happened at some of the New York tournaments where a guy saw it was going to be me again, and he knew I'm going to torture him for the whole 9 minutes. So they bend down and grab their ankle and say, oh, they can't compete. And I got a lot of buys on some of my competitions where the other guy figured, I'm not going to get tortured. I'm not going to go in that competitive area. So they would just make like they were injured and I didn't have to fight them.
It sounds like you might have been one of the original guys that did sports psyching.
Well, I mean, Dan Gable was like, one of my idols growing up. He was around the same. I inducted him into the Sports Hall of Fame, probably one of the greatest collegiate wrestlers as well as freestyle wrestling coaches in history. And he'd be training and working out in between matches. I mean, insane. But unfortunately, his overtraining ended up with 2 replaced hips, 2 replaced knees, and so on. But what an athlete and what a competitor. Unbelievable.
A lot of fire.
And now.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have this amazing International Sports Hall of Fame event you do. You've had this beautiful trophy of Arnold, which I totally forgot about, which we always have to take a picture when we're there. Your sponsor, did you say the wrestling event that also goes on over the weekend?
Well, over the years, I've sponsored different events and many times multiple events over one particular Arnold championship. So there was one year where I sponsored the statue, the Arnold Sports Film Festival, the Highland Games, which they had held for the first time that year, as well. And I mentioned the statue, as well as the International Sports Hall of Fame. So I'm running from one stage to the next. And And again, I'm completely non-commercial. I don't, no vitamin company, no nothing. I was doing this just to try and give athletes the opportunity to be able to compete in these different events and feel that, that they receive nice awards. We even have an award every year for the Arnold photo contest for the Arnold statue, where everybody poses and sends in pictures of themselves with the statue, and we give an award out for that.
What's the award?
It's a plaque I have made up for them, was first place in the Arnold photo statue competition.
That is so cool.
And you get families, you get a whole family that's posing with the statue, and it's usually a family that wins versus a bodybuilder or somebody like that.
Gotcha. So where does this passion and motivation come from to give so much back to your fellow athlete?
I mean, I've sort of always been wired this way. I just think I get a lot more fulfillment, that giving and that changing other people's lives. Some of the greatest experiences I had was mentoring, young athletes, and then seeing them years later and them, saying, wow, this really changed my life. Look, I had great mentors. I had Jack LaLanne, I had Arnold Schwarzenegger, Reg Park, who was Arnold's idol, Joe Weider, Ben Weider. These were all remarkable, iconic type figures. And over the years, I got to meet all of you, George Eiferman, John Grimmick. I mean, you're a bodybuilder, you've won championships. You know that these were our iconic figures. And one of the things that they would do is they would take a moment and spend some time with a young aspiring person. I mean, just like Ben Weider was writing me back when I was a 13-year-old kid saying, I want to be a doctor one day. And here's a guy who was running a world federation, a multimillionaire, and there's a 13-year-old kid from the projects writing him a letter saying, I'd like to do this or do that. And him writing back repeatedly. And then eventually, of course, I took over the IFBB and NPC medical commissions worldwide. And it was kind of a, iconic moment for me, because I'd been writing Ben for 15 years until I actually met him in person when I was in my late 20s, almost 30 years old.
All the names that you mentioned are the same individuals that I met through the years, and I was able to spend. My first job was with Jack LaLanne. Jack gave me my first job.
Yeah, Jack. I worked for Jack. Everybody worked for Jack.
Yeah,
one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going into this interview not knowing he was there, and he was in the back room, and this lady comes out. Of course, it was Elaine, and we still stay in touch. It's been about a year, but I need to call her. And Elaine comes out, and then she says, what are you here for? I said, I'm here for a job. And she says, well, come back here in the room for a minute. And then Jack's sitting there with a couple other people, and well, kid, what do you do? I says, well, what do you want me to do? I said, do you need a janitor? I mean, whatever you need, just let me know. And so I got my first gig, basically in the juice bar, making smoothies and protein shakes and selling pills. And Jack, was popping in all his facilities that he owned at the time. American Health and Fitness, I think, is what the company was called. And then, of course, he sold everything. But those are the kind of individuals that, like yourself, that are not afraid to share knowledge, wisdom, success. I don't sense that same thing with this new generation. I see to be a little bit more protective.
Well, they're very me oriented. It's a very entitled generation, and this because they've been given a lot by their parents. And that's not really a gift. That's bad parenting, because they give so much to kids that they don't know what it's like to strive and to work and also volunteer. We had to volunteer all the time. Like I remember when, and I mentioned this on the previous interview with you, when I worked for Ben Weider, the IFBB, MPC, all volunteer. We never paid. For years, for decades, we did these things because we wanted to give back to the athletes and to the federation. And I never traveled overseas until Ben flew me to Tokyo in 1986 for the World Bodybuilding Champ, the Mr. Universe, which, by the way, Ralph Mueller, who ended up being in Gladiator and a bunch of the other, Ralph, of course, in California, that he barely spoke English, from Germany, and he won the heavyweight championship. But he was so nervous before the competition, he actually threw up in the bathroom, but he came out and he won. And he was like the largest bodybuilder, any of these people. And the Japanese were quite short, and seeing somebody his size, they just went crazy. So I was doing drug testing for the bodybuilding sport back then. And when Ralph came in the back, all the Japanese doctors were in their white outfits, their the doctor outfits. And as soon as he came in, it all happened so quickly. It was almost like a movie. They all whipped out their cameras, jumped all over his arms and his whole body, taking pictures with him because they'd never seen a bodybuilder that big before. And I had to stop everybody and say, guys, we got to do our dope control. I got to do the drug testing. Could you please get off of his arms? Leave him alone. We got to get this done. It was like a crazy movie. It was like one of the crazy, Chinese Hong Kong movies.
It sounds like a Godzilla movie almost a little bit.
Pretty much, yeah.
So he's about 6'8", something like that?
I don't think he's quite that tall, but he's a big boy. And a very nice guy too. And he hangs out with Arnold a lot. He's one of Arnold's, very close handlers.
Right.
And he had some good breaks, when he did Gladiator and some of the other movies. And getting to meet all these people, like, getting to see every major Mr. Olympia almost from the beginning over the last 30 years. I saw like Lee Haney and Lee Labrada and all these guys. I saw them as amateurs coming through the ranks. As a national champion and then going to the world championships and then going to the Olympia and so on.
We lost his sound a little bit for some reason. He's gone. I don't know what happened with his voice. He's trying to get back on. I think he's going to come back in a second. We're talking, of course, to Dr. Bob Goldman, talking about bodybuilding and the sports festival, the Arnold Sports Festival coming up, of course, starting this Friday, going till the weekend. And we're also talking about the International Sports Hall of Fame that Dr. Bob Goldman is, the founder of, and of course, he's such a big part of that whole thing. He's just an amazing individual. I mean, one of the just top everything in fitness. He was in Guinness World Records 20 times, Sarah. And he's also the co-founder, of course, of the World Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And he also is was the president of the National Academy of Sports Medicine, NASM. Just an amazing individual. He's gone. He's going to come back in a second before he takes off for the Arnold Sports Festival. And I had a couple more questions, but I will say this. We need more individuals that care.
I just got back. That was Michael Jai White on the phone.
There he is.
Okay.
You're back.
Yep.
So what is it about? What do you want to be remembered? If somebody were to say years later, when you're physically no longer here, what would you want to be remembered for?
Well, I actually have to start thinking about that over the next coming years anyway, what ends up on your stone. But, it will probably be something along the lines of, giving back, leaving the world better than I found it, and really just trying to change what this world was all about, and really have people think of you in a very positive and fond way, that you really affected others in a very positive manner and inspired them to do and be more. Just like Jack LaLanne did for me, and Joe Weider did for me, and Ben Weider did for me, and for millions of others. So we all want to be remembered in a very positive way, and realize it's not about money. There's no Brinks truck following you to the cemetery. People get all hung up on fancy cars. I like trucks and SUVs. I've never bought a fancy sports car in my life. I can afford to buy any car I want, but so what? I don't care. I want a car. You turn the key and it works. And I got room in the back to throw all my junk. So in Montana, I have a big Silverado truck, and all my other cars are all just SUVs, so I could throw stuff in the back.
I love trucks. I love trucks a lot. I love trucks. So you like the Silverado, huh?
I like Silverado. It's a pretty sturdy truck, but I'm more of an SUV truck guy versus a Lamborghini, Ferrari, Bentley. I've never owned any of those cars in my life, nor do I have any interest in it. I can afford them, but who cares? I don't need it.
So what is it you haven't done that maybe you'd like to do in the next 5 years? I mean, I'm sure you have a list of things.
I have some very large medical projects that I'm working on that could have some very significant impact on millions of lives. And I can't really speak about them in detail, but hopefully soon they will become more public. And I'm also trying to come up with some cures and some answers to how we can add an extra 20, 30, 40 years to our life because we're having too much fun. And I'm sure you don't want to, you'd like to see your great grandkids or whatever. So I'm working on that area as well. If we don't all blow ourselves up, maybe we'll have a chance of doing this.
How important, I mean, we know exercise is important. How important is good food and supplementation?
Oh, no, I mean, I take like 30 supplemental pills a day, vitamins and nutrients. Diet is really important. I mean, training is important. I'm a real fan of weightlifting and, resistance training and proper diet. But you got to cheat too. You got to have a little food on, the food you like. If you like your cheesecake or whatever, or pizza or whatever, you can't be. And I know you've competed in the natural bodybuilding shows, but you got to live a little too. People, when I see some of the bodybuilders, it's kind of crazy because their whole life is about feeding 8 meals a day. I mean, it's pretty crazy. It's so much. I mean, I guess they have to do it to reach that point and to get that kind of size and mass. But to me, even though I've been very involved in the bodybuilding sport, I never once competed in a bodybuilding show myself. I understand about training. I've helped, with the injuries of the athletes and guidance and so on. But it does become a bit obsessive. And, hopefully they're doing some other fun things in their life versus just worrying about their next meal of 1 of 8 per the day.
Well, I mean, some of the great bodybuilders also, some of them, of course you can say, well, it's a different time, but I mean, people like Steve Reeves, people, even like, Reg Park. I mean, compared to what's going on nowadays, I mean, the meals were not, I think Reeves did 3 meals a day.
Oh yeah, no, that was pretty normal. I mean, I'd like to speak about Reg Park for a moment. Reg was Arnold's idol, and I was very close with Reg. Really a remarkable, great man. Reg, in his late 70s, looked unbelievable. I mean, he was as big as a bodybuilder in their prime. And you look at him. Even John Grimmick, who lived to be 85. I saw John shortly before he died. John was a beast. He died peaceful in his sleep at 85, but he still had his huge chest and arms and shoulders. I mean, he was still in great shape. A lot of the old-time bodybuilders, they're amazing. I mean, these guys were not just good bodybuilders, they were athletes. They were real athletes. They could do a lot. Many of them were Olympic lifters, power lifters, really impressive individuals as sportsmen.
I think John was even was an Olympic athlete, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, these guys were unbelievable. These guys were, many of them were Olympians, on the U.S. Olympic team. And I got to, over the years, meet many of and interact with many of the Olympic, from York Barbell Company. Remember, back in the old days, you had Dan Lurie on the East Coast. Remember, with Muscle Training Illustrated, which was my first writing job when I used to write for the Musclehead magazines. Was with Dan Lurie. Then you had Joe and Ben Weider on the West Coast. Ben, of course, was up in Canada. Then you had Perry Rader in the Midwest with Ironman magazine, which John Balick ended up taking over. You had all these interesting individuals, Bob Hoffman, who was with the York Barbell Company. And these were the titans back then. So you had these different competing individuals in the world of weightlifting and bodybuilding. And remember, back in the old days, they called it physical culture. They're very anti-bodybuilding. Who wants to do that? But in reality, bodybuilding became the dominant force because people, even for their cosmetic reasons, wanted to get in great shape. And bodybuilding techniques are used around the world today for every sport.
It is. What's the definition in your mind of a physical culturist?
Well, I mean, that's anybody. I mean, it's kind of interesting. The largest physical culture museum in the world is at University of Texas, Austin, the Stark Center, started by Terry Todd, and Jan Todd. Terry, unfortunately, has passed away, but both him and Jan were inducted into the International Sports Hall of Fame the year before Terry passed away. But that's the largest physical culture museum in the world. And they have amazing archives. I've donated many items to it as well. Arnold has, Jack LaLanne has, Ben and Joe Weider have. Betty Weider has. So physical culture is really, it's a mindset, and it can encompass everything from sport activities to bodybuilding to the archives of nutrition and health and fitness and so on.
Well, I think we need that more right now. I think it needs to come back.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. As a culture.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need that to revisit that word because we need the roundness, the whole completeness of what that means, and we've lost that.
Well, what's also kind of neat, the women are really involved. Women now are in amazing shape. I mean, some of them may take it a bit too far, but the women's divisions used to have like two or three women competing in the bikini or the figure, and now you have hundreds in a single contest. And so the women have become very, very serious athletes in bodybuilding, in fitness, in weightlifting. I mean, some real serious, hardcore athletes, and competitive.
Will we ever see your Rachel McClish possibly be inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Well,
International
I
Hall of
mean,
Fame?
I have 20 global advisors. I like Rachel very much. She's terrific. And we had Corey Everson, we had
Yeah,
Linda Murray so far inducted. I make some suggestions, but I sort of defer to the global advisory board, so I'm sort of arm's length. The
right.
only area where I sort of stepped in a bit was this our sort of 10th or 11th anniversary in the martial arts, UFC, MMA, boxing area, because I felt it was important to really make a big splash for this anniversary.
Well, I tell you, this event that you put on has always been my favorite event at the Arnold. I still call it the Arnold because it is to me still the Arnold, even though it's so much more than that. You just put a well produced. You feel the care you care. It comes across in what you do and the detail, and there's just something really inspirational, of course, about it. What do you think makes the Arnold Sports Festival as festival for as many years as it has become, other than the fact Arnold's involved? Because it's probably the biggest of its kind, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have 200. It's one of the largest sports festivals in the world, and Jim Lorimer and Arnold have done an amazing job. And you have 22,000 competing athletes, which is double the size of the Olympics, and dozens of different sports. It really is a remarkable weekend that we've all looked forward to. We hated to miss it a few years, but we're all very excited to be together again. There's nothing that can replace that human experience of all of us being together. And I haven't seen Arnold for quite a while, for a few years myself either. So it'd be great to see him and great to see all of the whole gang. So we're all really looking forward to getting together. And our Sports Hall of Fame takes for that hour and a half ceremony, it takes a full year. Enormous resources go in to make that happen, to
Wow.
get these people out, to fly them out, make all the arrangements, because these are very busy people. These are world champions with their schedules and so on. We've had, as I mentioned in the last interview, we've had like 4 Heisman Trophy winners. People have been in the NFL's Hall of Fame, all pro athletes in the NBA, NFL, in Baseball Hall of Fame. It takes a lot of work. And also the human dynamic part of the mixing of the class of the different people I had mentioned in that other interview. What was to me the most profound human dynamic in all the years we've been in a Hall of Fame. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I put in 2012, but I had Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruno Sammartino, and Franco Colombo had not seen each other in 45 years until I put them all on that stage together. Last time they saw each other was working out in a gym in New York City until they were on that stage. And what I try to express to people during the ceremony is this is a once in a lifetime experience. Everybody in this room will never be together again. This is a one-shot deal. Bruno's passed away, Franco's passed away. And in the room, you have UFC world champions, world's strongest men, WWE world champions, NFL champions. You have all this mix. And out of the 200,000 people, there's only about 150 people in that room, with almost 100 being international press.
Wow.
So this is really, it's like a global life event. And everybody in that room understands that. They feel that. They can feel that energy. And the speeches and the inspirational words that are spoken by the inductees are probably even different than they thought they were going to speak about. Because the speeches are about mentoring, giving back, because in order to get in the International Sports Hall of Fame, not only you have to be iconic and a world champion, but you must do that giving back post-career. That is as important as being a champion. If you're a great champion, but you never gave back through charitable works, you're not a candidate. So we think that that's very, very important to be worthy of that award.
Well, I'll tell you, you continue to inspire all of us. You are so vital to everything involved with the world right now in life. And I think you're also on the President's Council of Physical Fitness, weren't you?
Well, it's kind of funny. I happen to grab this shirt. I'm the only person in history who has actually served on the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sport under 4 presidents.
Wow.
The most anybody's ever done is under two presidents. So I was under Old Man Bush, Clinton, Trump, and now the present administration. So I'm still serving. I've been under 4 presidents. So I don't think anybody in the 60 years of the council has ever done that.
Now, is that one that the Guinness World Records is aware of?
Well, no, I'm just mentioning now, though. It's not any.
I think they need to know. I think they need to know about this.
Well, we just happen to bring it up, but no, I don't think. I don't think anybody really cares anyway.
Well, I disagree, but I mean, it seems like everything you do is a record. You break a record just sneezing. I mean, it's crazy.
Records are made to be broken, and that's why sometimes people would ask, how do you feel when somebody breaks your record? I go, great. That's what the records are for. They're there to be broken. And a lot of times I would break my own records, but everything, eventually pretty much all the records get broken. That's part of the way the game goes. And you got to be proud of the new group coming in, and good for them. And it's their time now. You had your time. Now it's their time.
Well, you're always very humble, and I always enjoy speaking with you. And I am going to miss being at the event this year. Maybe next year we can be there to support you. And just thank you for everything you do.
Well, a pleasure. Always good to see you, Brett. And I'll look forward to seeing you at the next event. And you keep up the good work, because you're doing a lot of inspiring yourself. I was real proud of you when you entered that contest as an old man and actually won, I think. But even if you didn't win, that was still fine.
Well, in our division, when I first competed, how it's the senior division?
Well, yeah, because you're still above ground.
That's one thing. The other thing is we have to wear Depends in the posing divisions.
Well, I didn't see you wearing those, but I'm glad that you're able to enjoy the experience.
Well, I appreciate it. And I got to tell you, you've been an inspiration to me, and I look forward to doing more things and, watching all your great things you're still going to do, because you have a lot to do still.
Sorry we got disconnected. My good buddy, Michael Jai White, was calling. I'm going to buzz him back right after. I was the executive producer on his new movie coming out, Outlaw Johnny Black. If you want somebody who's like an amazing athlete, and I put Michael in the Hall of Fame several years back. I mean, here's a guy who's like in his late 50s and still performs like he's 25.
Okay. Sounds like I think you have a lot of good. Our show is not controversial. I think it's more about bringing people together and finding, similarities, and maybe inspiring people to raise, go to the next level. I like to do good stories on good people doing good things, and I don't want to get into any political mess or religious things. I just want to focus on kind of the way I was raised. We all were a melting pot of varieties of personalities, and we found ways to, maybe we challenged each other, but we always, like you said, you could get in a fight and then you were friends for life.
The only way for the human race to survive is to interact in a positive way. Negativity breeds negative results. I mean, and, hate and anger just doesn't work over time. And there's a lot of good people out there. And if somebody is negative or toxic, you get away from them. You don't sit there and fight with them. It's a waste of your time. And the one thing you cannot take back is time. When the time is gone, that second, that hour, this hour that we just did this conversation, we can't get that hour back. It's gone. Oh, right. You can't buy it back. There's no way to get it back. And at the end of days, when you're going to close your eyes for that last time, you want to say, you know what? I really had a great ride. Boy, what a great ride it was. And that's the way, because we're not here forever. We're only here for like a nanosecond. If you look at the history of the world, we're not even here for a blink of an eye. And we're less than a grain of sand on an enormous beach. And we're one little tiny, tiny planet in a massive series of universes, not a universe, universes. So in solar systems. So, we just got to do the good we can do in the little world that we're in and just keep moving forward.
Dr. Bob Goldman, thank you for everything. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully before the end of the year somewhere along the way.
Sounds good.
You take care of yourself.
Thanks, Brett.
Okay, bye. That was Dr. Bob Goldman, somebody we have a lot of respect for. Thank you for being on our show with his busy schedule. And we wish him very the very best, of course, for his International Hall of Fame induction this weekend, of course, at the Arnold Sports Festival in Columbus, Ohio, which is a great city. And we think the world of what they do every year there. And if anybody has not had a chance to go to the Arnold Sports Festival, I highly recommend it. It is just a great time and great individuals. Everybody have a great day. Take care of yourselves. Remember, be nice to each other, and yippee-ki-yay.